Now we go back to my favorite topic, which is, of course, financial reform. I am obsessed. As any of you watching the show know, somebody we talked to before who I think is very instructive on this topic is Dean Baker. He's the co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and he wrote a very interesting article about Citigroup and how they are or are not paying back to taxpayers. Dean, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's get to it. I hear Citigroup is paying us nearly $8 billion back. We made money off of them. What are you still complaining about, Dean?
Well, this is really kind of fascinating. My immediate target here was the Washington Post, which was touting this as proof that the TARP was a big victory, great deal. At first in a news story, which is kind of striking. Usually you're not supposed to put things like that in news stories, but this is the Washington Post. We call them Fox on 15th Street here, and then they had an editorial. Well, the basic story here is that when we gave money to Citigroup, we gave them enough money to basically buy the company outright. But we didn't do that. So we gave them $27 billion. This is the second time we gave them money. This is November of 2008. We could have bought them outright. Instead, we got preferred shares. I won't go through all the details. But the point is we end up converting the shares, and we got a 27% ownership stake. So keep in mind, let's keep our eyes on the ball here. We put up enough money to own them outright. Instead, we got a 27% stake, and the price of stock went up. So we were able to claim an $8 billion profit. Now, the value of Citigroup stock today is about $110, $120 billion. Where'd the rest of that go? Well, that went to Citigroup shareholders. Well, why did Citigroup stock go up? Well, the main reason Citigroup stock went up is because basically the government was guaranteeing its credit. Citigroup is too big to fail. If you look it up in the dictionary, there's Citigroup. We took a number of steps. We basically said, we meaning here the Treasury and the Fed, that we would not let Citigroup go under, and because of that, they were able to borrow at lower cost because everyone knows the government's not going to let Citigroup go under. That increased its stock price. That's pretty straightforward. You know, if I could go and borrow at a real low cost, well, that's a good deal for me. I could go out and lend at a higher price and make money. Well, that was a deal Citigroup got. So the Washington Post and other people who were touting the profit were ignoring the fact that we actually gave a much larger amount of money to Citigroup shareholders and, of course, to their top executives who are all taking them big paychecks during this period.
So, Dean, I want to make sure we have that absolutely right. You think that for the amount of money we put in, we could have gotten all of Citigroup. Does that mean that instead of having $8 billion back now, that we could have the whole $120 billion or so?
Yeah, I shouldn't say I think. I know. I mean, it's all matter of public record. We gave them $27 billion in November of 2008, and if you look at their stock price on that day we gave them the money, we could have bought the whole company 100%. We would have owned it outright.
Okay, so it seems like we got a little bit of a raw deal there, but I want to get into more specifics here because I thought your piece on this was, as I said earlier, very instructive. So you explain all the different subsidies that Citigroup wound up getting that people don't talk about. So what's the $4 billion in the too big to fail subsidies?
Well, this is the gap between the interest rate that they pay and the interest rates that smaller banks pay. And you could sometimes say, okay, a big bank will have a lower interest rate because being a big bank, it's secure, et cetera, et cetera. You couldn't say that about Citigroup. So if Citigroup was paying a lower interest rate than, say, your community bank down the corner or even some fairly large banks, it wasn't because they were a big, safe bank. It was because a bank that they knew the government would not let fail.
So that winds up making them $4.4 billion because they're paying a lower interest rate.
Exactly.
Okay. And how about the $9.5 billion in TARP handouts? Didn't we get paid back on that?
Yeah, well, again, this is a question of giving them money at below market rates. And this is kind of a game, you know, it's sort of treating us like we're school kids. There's a market interest rate, and I took this number actually directly from the Congressional Oversight Panel chaired by Elizabeth Warren. They had contracted out with an independent agency, independent professionals to calculate the value of the money given to the various banks under the original TARP package. And their calculation was that what we got back, what we charged Citigroup, was $9 billion less than what the market value would have been. So we all understand that, if I get a mortgage and someone gives me a mortgage at a 3% interest rate, well, they could say, hey, I made 3% interest. But we all know the going rate for a mortgage is 5%, 5.5%, maybe 6%, depending on your circumstances. So if they give me a mortgage at 3%, they're giving me a big gift. And that's, in fact, what we do with Citigroup. So we can say we made money on it, but that's really misleading.
Okay, and how about the $1.4 billion in FDIC subsidies? How does that play?
Well, this is the FDIC guaranteed loans for Citigroup and other major banks, and what this meant was that they were able to take out, I think it was $60 billion in loans. I forget the exact figure, but somewhere in that ballpark. That the FDIC, which is basically the government, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which it's the government agency that guarantees the money we have in the bank, and at the end of the day, if they ran into trouble, the government would bail them out. Everyone acknowledges that. They guaranteed $60 billion worth of loans that Citigroup took out, again, allowing them to get loans at a considerably lower interest rate. It's like you or I, again, I was take the mortgage example. Suppose we go to the bank and try and take out a mortgage, and we go, don't worry, the government's going to back this up. Well, obviously you get a lower interest rate if they know the government's prepared to pay in full if there's any problem with that loan.
And when you're talking about, values of 100 billion, 200 billion, et cetera, when you have a lower interest rate, that winds up, saving you billions of dollars, as you explained. But the one part that is so incredible that I almost have trouble believing is that we're giving them money at nearly 0%, and they could buy treasury bonds back at 3.7% interest from us and make $7 billion a year. So is it really true that we give them the money at almost nothing, and then they loan it back to us at 3.7% and just take the profit?
Well, this is a story of, what the Fed's been doing to try and stimulate the economy. It's not necessarily a bad policy, but we have to understand the banks make out really well in this. So what's going on is they've pushed their short-term rates to near zero. So Citigroup and other banks, it's not just Citigroup, obviously, they can go to the Fed and they can borrow short-term at near zero interest. Then they could take the same money that they just borrowed from us, and the Fed is us. People should understand that the Fed's an agency of the government. They could take that money that they just borrowed from us at near zero interest, go to the Treasury and go, okay, I want a 10-year Treasury bond, and that currently pays, actually it's about 4% now, but in any case, 3.7, that's what it had been, and get 3.7% interest on the money that they're borrowing from us at near zero.
I mean, but that's an unacceptable scam, isn't it? I mean, I get that they want to stimulate the economy, but it seems to me that they shouldn't ever be able to put it below whatever the Treasury bond is, because I mean, if they gave me $1 billion and said, all right, you don't have to pay any interest on it, but I can give it back to them and take 3.7%, I mean, that'd almost be criminal.
Well, I mean, this is the position banks are in, and they're in a position to make money basically based on the government. And this is, why it's not, when people talk about a free market, you go, no, banks, they perform a quasi-public service. And we should recognize that, but at the same time, what that means is we don't just have to go, oh, you're a real smart guy, Mr. Prince or Mr. the former CEO of Citigroup, or Jamie Dimon, the head of J.P. Morgan. You get to make $20 million, or $30 million, or $40 million. No, these are sort of quasi-public institutions. They have special access. I can't go to the Fed and go, hey, give me a loan at zero interest. Now, again, there's reasons why we want to give them loans at that. We want them to get money cheap so they'll be more likely to lend it out. So that makes sense. But on the other hand, that gives them the opportunity to do exactly what you and I were talking about. They could just lend it back to us at 3.7%, and that's not really helped the economy.
Yeah, no, look, the reason I say brought up the word criminal is because if they did that to an individual, like Dick Cheney decided to give it to his best friend, or Obama did, or Axelrod did, well, people would go crazy. Well, you can't just give somebody $1 billion of government money and then have the government borrow it back from them at 4% or whatever it is. But if a company does it, a large bank does it, all of a sudden it's sane. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So now let's go on to Freddie and Fannie, because that's another thing that doesn't make sense to me. We're talking to Dean Baker. He's a co-director for the Center for Economic Policy and Research. He's also the author of many books, including Plunder and Blunder and False Profits, Recovering from the Bubble Economy. Dean, so how does Citi take some of its bad mortgages and unload them on Fannie and Freddie? Did that happen? And if so, how did that happen?
Well, here I'm just totally speculating. We know Fannie and Freddie have lost to date, the numbers I put at around 120 billion. It's clearly going to go higher. Will it go to 200 billion? Will it go to 300 billion? We don't know, but it's clearly going to go higher. It's 120 billion to date. It's clearly going to be more than that. The way Fannie and Freddie lose money is, by definition, they paid more for mortgages than they should have. That's how they lose money, because basically they got mortgages at one price and now they're worth less today, in some cases a lot less. Well, one of the banks they were buying mortgages from was Citigroup. So how many did they buy from Citigroup? That I don't know. I just said, let's assume, Citigroup's got roughly 10% deposits. They're 10% of the various markets.
No, let's stop there for a second. Why are we speculating? Fannie and Freddie at this point are totally government owned, right? So why shouldn't that be a matter of public record who they bought the mortgages from?
Well, to be honest, I don't know fully what Fannie and Freddie have disclosed. I've not gone through their books. They'd be big books. So I can't tell you for sure whether that is publicly available. All I could say is I've not looked for it. So
okay, that's fair.
So I can tell you.
All right, now, but what no one seems to be able to explain to me is why are Fannie and Freddie buying all this crap?
Well, that's a really good question. This is something I think people haven't paid enough attention to. Now, part of it was that they presumably had bad judgment. They didn't know it was crap in the sense that they bought it back in 06, 07 when everyone was, thought house prices only went up and everything was great. So that clearly is much of their losses. But an issue I've tried to raise and no one else seems interested in is how much of their losses are from buying mortgages or mortgage-backed securities after they went into conservatorships, after the government took them over in September of 08. Because that means that we're in effect bailing out Citigroup or whoever else we bought those mortgages from. And that should be a real cause for concern, because again, maybe we want to do that. Maybe we don't want Citi to collapse. Maybe we don't want Chase or whoever to collapse, but we should know this.
Look, I haven't done the research on it, but I'm going to guarantee you here, they bought a lot of stuff after 08, and that the banks are dumping stuff on Fannie and Freddie as quickly as they possibly can. Then they will turn around and say, see, the government shouldn't regulate us because the government had Fannie and Freddie and they screwed it up.
I would not rule that out at all. And I wish I had the answer to how much of the stuff they're taking losses on they've bought post September 08. But I think
who's making the decisions over there?
Question.
Who's making the decisions over there? I mean, if it's Geithner, I'm sure he'd love to take the losses off the bank's hands, but now he doesn't directly run it. Obviously,
this is under Treasury, so Geithner. He's not on a day-to-day basis calling shots, but it is under his purview. So how much direct involvement he has, I don't know, but certainly under his purview.
Somebody's got to look into that, because my sense of it is they're dumping, because. So, all right, let's summarize, Dean. Okay, one, we don't know to the extent to which they dumped their bad stuff on Fannie and Freddie. Actually, before the summary, one other aspect of that. The Fed, speaking of dumping, the Fed is buying stuff. What is the Fed buying? They've never done that before, have they?
No, the Fed has bought massive amounts of mortgage-backed securities with the idea of lowering mortgage interest rates. I have excuse on that. I think it's a reasonable policy to try and lower long-term interest rates.
No.
I would have rather had them just buy up long-term Treasury bonds. But in any case, so they've lowered long-term interest rates. But what that does is it raises the price of mortgages. So if the interest rate is lower, if I have a mortgage that has a 5.5% interest on it, I'm holding that, I'm the bank, and the interest rate falls to 5%, well, that mortgage is going up in value by about 7%. So by pressing down interest rates, and they got the 30-year mortgage rate at one point down to about 4.7%, but lately it's been around 5%. By pressing down interest rates, they've increased the value on the mortgages that Citigroup and everyone else holds. So what that's meant is that, at least in the short term, they've increased their assets. Now, over the longer term, the Fed is presumably going to sell these back. So they have $1.25 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities.
Oh.
They're going to look to sell those back, and it's very likely they'll end up selling them at a loss.
No. That's another disaster in the waiting. What are they doing buying mortgage-backed securities for? If you buy it at the end of the year, they report a profit and everybody celebrated. What you call Washington Post land. And I saw the New York Times, and everybody's like, "Oh, look, the Fed made money." And I thought, wait a minute, if the Fed can make money, it can lose money.
Yeah.
And so if they're unloading all their crap on the Fed, which I can, again, nearly guarantee you that they are, one day that bill is going to come due. And then what does the Fed do if it loses all that money? Where do they get it from? They just print more, right?
Yeah, the Fed could print more. I mean, again, it's not necessarily the wrong policy, but for us to somehow say that we're making money on this deal is close to nuts.
No, I think it's the wrong policy. You can't look. These regulators are completely captured by the banks. Okay, so
that's exactly right. I mean, let me try and distinguish two issues. One is we want to support the economy. This is a way to support the economy. We don't want to give money to the banks, or at least I don't. I have no desire to give Jamie Dimon and these other people more money. They're very rich. We have no obligation to give them more money. We can support the financial system. We can support the economy without giving them more money. But we have to recognize that these policies are fair dollars to the banks. That's the point. So I don't mind us doing policies that stimulate the economy. What I mind is that the shareholders of Citi are going to get rich from it. The executives at Citi are going to get rich from it. That's the big problem.
I think the big problem is when we crash again, which is now every day I grow more and more certain that we're going to have another terrible, much worse crash. Then we go to the Fed and go, all right, Fed, what's your situation? They go, oh, shoot, we took the worst kind of assets and we've lost all the money.
They could print more. They could print more.
Yeah, I know, but
people have to understand this. We can't get out of this. We possess the means to get out of it. We just have to do some different.
But printing more money isn't the answer, Dean. I mean, they're gonna.
No, in some ways, it really is. It is that simple. That might sound overly simplifying things, but at the end of the day, it kind of boils down to that because we're not in a situation. You look at the classic stories where you had runaway inflation. Germany, Weimar Germany, or Zimbabwe, or whatever. Those were not big, robust, integrated economies. We are. And printing money is going to create demand. Our problem is not a lack of supply. It's not that we lack resources in the United States, or we don't have enough workers, or we don't have enough capital, or we don't have good enough infrastructure. What we lack is demand. And one way you create demand is printing money.
Yeah, I think that's a disastrous idea, to be honest with you, in the long run. I mean, they buy $1.25 trillion in probably the worst assets in America. Those banks didn't sell them good assets. Okay, I'd be shocked if they did. They probably unloaded the worst assets they have. And then when they lose a tremendous money off that, they're just going to print more money. I mean, that sounds like to me that you're going to get stagflation again.
Well, again, you look at the numbers on inflation right now. We don't see any. It's going
now,
down
yeah, because we've built another bubble.
It's hard to see where the bubble is at the moment. I mean, again, I was writing about the housing bubble. House prices are still going to fall more. I mean, that I'll guarantee you. But I don't see another bubble coming up at the moment.
I see the bubble.
There could always be one down the road, but I just don't see one now.
I kind of see a financial bubble, if that makes any sense. But all right, let's finish up as I was saying before. Let's summarize. So, mainly, overall, how much do you think the banks have gotten in these kind of hidden subsidies, where they could borrow at almost nothing and then use that advantage, and their loans are backed up? And they get to unload their worst loans, et cetera. And all of those put together, how much money did Citigroup wind up making off that?
I think we're probably talking in the high tens of billions, if not over 100 billion. So the idea somehow we end up a net gainer on this is crazy.
The whole thing drives me crazy. All right, Dean Baker. The books are Plunder and Blunder, False Profits, and the organization, of course, is Center for Economic and Policy Research. Always illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me on.